You ever have one of those moments when something so small hits you right in the heart, and you realize it's not about the price tag, it's about the meaning behind it? That's where the story begins. It was the Sunday night before Cyber Monday. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the dishwasher and my husband, Ethan, typing away on his laptop at the kitchen table. I remember that glow from the screen lighting up his face. I was scrolling through deals, half bored, half curious, like everyone else that time of year. "Hey, babe," he said casually, "is there anything you've been wanting?" I laughed. "Other than a vacation and 8 hours of sleep? Nope." He smiled, shook his head, and went back to typing. At the time, I didn't think much of it. We'd promised each other we wouldn't go big on gifts that year. Money was tight. The holidays were stressful. We were both working extra hours just to make ends meet. I figured he was probably just browsing, maybe picking out something small, like socks or a mug with a funny quote. But what I didn't know was that he was about to find something that would change how I saw love, and him forever. See, Ethan isn't a grand gesture kind of guy. He's not the one who plans surprise trips or writes poetic love letters. He's more of a quiet moments person, makes me coffee before I wake up, fills up my gas tank without telling me, checks the locks before bed. The little things that say, "I love you," without words. So, when he asked me that question, it didn't seem unusual. But deep down, I noticed something different in his tone that night, a kind of quiet intention. The kind where you can tell someone's already made up their mind. The next day, Cyber Monday, came and went. I worked late, came home exhausted, and didn't even notice the brown Amazon box on the doorstep until the next morning. I brought it inside, assumed it was one of my own orders, and put it by the tree without opening it. Fast forward to the following weekend. It was one of those cozy December mornings, gray sky, smell of coffee, soft Christmas music playing in the background. I was wrapping gifts when Ethan suddenly appeared beside me, holding that same Amazon box with a grin. "Hey," he said, "this one's for you." I looked up, confused. "What do you mean? I thought we weren't doing gifts until Christmas." He shrugged. "Just open it. Trust me." So I did. Inside the box was something so simple that at first I didn't get it. It was a small, square box, maybe 5 inches across, wrapped in plain brown paper with a handwritten note taped to the top that said, "Open this when you're ready to remember." I looked at him, my heart already curious. "Remember what?" He didn't answer, just smiled, the way he does when he knows I'm about to cry. So I peeled back the paper and opened the box. Inside was a small wooden music box, the kind you have to wind up by hand. On top, carved into the lid, were the words, "You are my sunshine." The moment I saw those words, I froze. That song wasn't just a random tune. It was our song, or more specifically, the song my mother used to sing to me every night before bed. She passed away when I was 16. I hadn't heard that song played since her funeral. I couldn't even bring myself to listen to it on the radio. It just hurt too much. Ethan had never met her. He only knew her through stories I'd shared late at night. Stories about her laugh, the way she'd hum that tune when she cooked, how her voice could calm me down even when I was a mess of tears. And yet, somehow, he found this tiny hand-cranked music box online. For $10, that played that exact song. When I turned the handle and heard those first delicate notes, my throat tightened. The sound was slightly tinny, imperfect, almost fragile, but it was her. It was everything she represented. It was comfort, memory, love, loss, all packed into a $10 gift that fit in my palm. Tears filled my eyes before I could even stop them. Ethan reached out and wrapped his arms around me. "I just thought," he whispered, "maybe you'd like to hear her again." And I broke. I cried into his shoulder, harder than I had in years. Because in that moment, it wasn't about the music box. It was about the fact that he saw me. Really saw me. The part of me that still missed her. The part one tried to hide behind busyness and smiles and late-night scrolling sessions. That night, after I'd finally calmed down, I sat alone on the couch with the music box in my hands. I wound it up again and again, letting the melody fill the living room. The Christmas lights twinkled on the tree, reflecting off the brass handle as I turned it slowly. And I thought about how much love can live in the smallest things. Not in diamond rings or luxury gifts or perfectly planned surprises, but in the simple, thoughtful gestures that whisper, "I remember what matters to you." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a $10 Cyber Monday deal. It was a reminder that love doesn't need to be loud to be life-changing. That night, after everything quieted down, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, the same spot where Ethan had been scrolling through his laptop just days earlier. The little wooden music box sat in front of me, and the house was so still that the ticking of the clock almost blended with the faint melody echoing in my head. I kept replaying the moment, his smile, the way he looked at me when I opened it, the soft hum of those fragile notes filling the room. It's strange how one tiny thing can reopen a part of your heart you didn't even realize was still locked. For years, I'd avoided thinking too much about my mom. I kept her photos in a box in the closet, told myself it was better to move forward to stay busy. But sitting there, listening to that song in my head, I could almost hear her again. The memory was so clear. I could see her standing by the kitchen window in our old house, humming while she made breakfast, the morning light catching in her hair. I used to sit on the counter, swinging my legs, pretending to help. And every morning, before I went to school, she'd sing that line to me. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." I didn't understand the weight of it back then. I do now. I looked over at Ethan as he cleaned up the living room, carefully folding the blanket I'd left on the couch. He wasn't doing anything extraordinary, but my chest swelled with gratitude. How could one person know exactly what you need without you even saying it? Later that night, when we got into bed, I whispered, "You have no idea what that meant to me." He smiled softly, eyes half closed. "I just wanted you to have a piece of her again." I rested my head on his chest and listened to his heartbeat. "You gave me more than that," I said. "You gave me a piece of myself back." Over the next few days, I found myself winding that music box constantly. Sometimes before work, sometimes late at night when the world felt too heavy. It became this little ritual, a grounding moment that reminded me that love can survive in memories, in echoes, in small things that outlast time. But something else happened too. The gift didn't just bring my mom closer, it brought Ethan and me closer. I started noticing all the ways he showed love without words. The way he'd pour my coffee just the way I liked it. Extra cream, no sugar. How he'd brush my hair off my shoulder when he walked past me in the kitchen. These weren't big gestures, but they were the kind that build a home, the kind that make ordinary days feel sacred. About a week later, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I went up to the attic, dug out that old box of my mom's things, and opened it. The smell hit me first. Faint lavender and dust. Inside were photos, recipe cards in her handwriting, a few postcards she'd collected, and a small envelope marked in her cursive. "For when you're ready." My breath caught. I don't know why I'd never noticed it before, or maybe I had, and I just wasn't ready to face it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single note. It said, "My sunshine, one day you'll hear this song and remember that love never leaves, it just changes form. When you do, smile for me." I sat there in the attic, crying into my hands, the note shaking between my fingers. How could she have known? How could she have known that years later, my husband, the man she never met, would somehow give me the key to open this exact moment? When I went back downstairs, Ethan was in the kitchen making dinner. I wrapped my arms around him from behind, held on tight, and whispered, "You brought her back to me." He turned, confused at first, but then saw the tears and smiled. "Good," he said softly. "That's what I hoped." We ate quietly that night, both of us knowing something had shifted. After dinner, I played the music box for him again. We sat together on the couch. No words, just listening. The melody filled the room like a memory we were both part of now. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the ache of missing her. I felt gratitude. Gratitude that love had found a way to reach across years, across loss, through the hands of the man I loved. That night, when we went to bed, I whispered a thank you to him, to her, to the universe, for reminding me that even a $10 gift can carry the weight of a lifetime of love. The next morning, I woke up before Ethan. The sun was barely up, painting the room in that soft orange light that only winter mornings seemed to have. The music box was still on my nightstand, right where I'd left it. I reached for it instinctively and turned the handle. The first few notes played quietly, and I smiled. Something inside me had changed overnight. Something subtle but real. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a piece of me was missing. I felt whole. Later that day, while I was getting ready for work, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. About how a simple $10 gift had pulled me back toward parts of myself I thought were gone forever. It made me realize how easily we forget that the smallest things often hold the deepest meaning. That night after dinner, I told Ethan I wanted to share a story. "Share it where?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "On YouTube," I said, half laughing, half serious. "You know I've been wanting to start that storytelling channel. This feels like the story I need to begin with." He looked at me for a second, then nodded. "If it helps someone else the way it helped you, then do it." I smiled, kissed his cheek, and whispered, "You're the reason I believe in little miracles." I spent the next few days writing out every detail: the music box, the song, the memories, the note I found in the attic. I wanted people to feel it, not just hear it. When I finally recorded the voiceover, I remember my hands shaking as I hit the record button. My voice cracked halfway through the first take, but I didn't stop. I wanted the emotion to be real. I told the story the way it happened, raw, unpolished, honest. I ended the video with one simple line: "Sometimes love costs $10. Sometimes it's priceless." When I uploaded it, I didn't expect much. I figured a few friends and family might see it. But overnight, the video took off. Thousands of views turned into hundreds of thousands. Comments started pouring in, people sharing their own stories about loss, about gifts that changed their lives, about small moments that carried enormous meaning. One woman wrote, "My mom used to sing that song to me too. I lost her last year, and I cried hearing your story. Thank you for reminding me that she's still with me." Another said, "I was having the hardest week. I watched this and went straight to hug my husband." We forget how much love hides in the little things. I sat there reading every comment, tears streaming down my face. I showed Ethan the video later that night. "You did this," I said. "You reminded people that love still exists." He shook his head. "No," he said softly. "You did. You just told the truth." And he was right. All I did was tell the truth. That gift wasn't just for me. It was for every person who's ever lost someone, every person who's ever wondered if their love still echoes somewhere out there. The video ended up being featured in a few blogs and even got shared on a news site about meaningful holiday stories. People started emailing me, asking how they could find a music box like mine. Some wanted to give it to their kids, others to their spouses. I sent them the link, smiling to myself at the thought that maybe somewhere out there, more people were winding those tiny handles, hearing that same fragile melody, feeling the same love that had found me. A few weeks later, I was sitting at the same kitchen table where this all began. Ethan was making coffee, and I was reading some of the newer comments. One of them stopped me cold. It said, "Your story saved me. I lost my husband 2 months ago, and I hadn't been able to feel anything until I heard that song. I cried for the first time since he passed, and it felt like a piece of him was still here. Thank you." I showed it to Ethan, and we both sat there quietly for a while. "You never know what people are carrying," I whispered. "No," he said. "But sometimes, one tiny act can lighten the load." We just looked at each other then, both of us realizing how big that truth really was. It wasn't about the music box anymore. It was about what it represented. Presence, thoughtfulness, connection, a reminder that love's not measured in grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's measured in the way you make someone feel seen. That night, as we sat on the couch watching the Christmas lights blink softly, I turned to Ethan and said, "You know, you could have bought me jewelry or perfume or something fancy, but you gave me something I'll never forget." He smiled, took my hand, and said, "That's kind of the point, isn't it?" I laughed softly and leaned into him. "Yeah," I said, "that's exactly the point." I didn't know it then, but that moment, the $10 music box, the video, the response from strangers, was the beginning of something much bigger than either of us imagined. The days after the video went viral felt surreal. My inbox was flooded with messages from people all over the country, and even a few from overseas. I remember one night scrolling through them while Ethan was beside me on the couch, his arm draped over my shoulder. There were stories from mothers, daughters, husbands, widows, each one touched by that same little song in their own way. Some people shared memories of lullabies their parents used to sing. Others told me they'd gone out and bought a music box of their own. The comments were filled with words like hope, healing, and remembrance. And I realized something beautiful. What started as a private moment between me and Ethan had rippled outward into something far bigger. That night, as I sat there with the music box in my hand, I turned to Ethan and said, "It's crazy, isn't it? How something so small can reach so many people." He smiled, his eyes soft in that quiet way of his. "Maybe that's what the world needs," he said. "Less big noise, more little reminders." I nodded, letting that sink in. He was right. Maybe we're all just searching for small reminders that we're not alone, that love still exists, even when life feels heavy. A few days later, I went to visit my mom's grave. It had been years since I'd gone. I brought the music box with me, wrapped carefully in a scarf. The cemetery was calm that afternoon. A breeze rustled through the bare branches, carrying the smell of winter and distant pine. I knelt down beside her stone, placed the box at its base, and wound it up. The soft melody floated through the cold air, thin and trembling, but it filled the space like a whisper from the past. "Hi, Mom," I said quietly. "I heard you again." I stayed there for a while, listening to that song repeat over and over, each rotation of the handle like a heartbeat. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel sadness sitting there. I felt peace. When I got back home, Ethan was waiting for me with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "How was it?" he asked. "Beautiful," I said, smiling. It felt like she was right there. He nodded, handed me the mug, and we sat together by the window watching the snow start to fall. Life went on after that, as it always does, but something inside me stayed different. Lighter, more awake. I began noticing beauty in small, ordinary things again. The smell of coffee in the morning, the way sunlight moved across the floor, the sound of Ethan humming under his breath while cooking. It was like that little music box had tuned my heart back to gratitude. A few months later, around Mother's Day, I posted a follow-up video. It wasn't planned or scripted. I just sat down in my living room with the music box beside me and talked to the camera. I told people about how much the response had meant to me, how many stories had poured in, and how every message reminded me that love truly doesn't die. It just finds new ways to reach us. The video wasn't fancy. No editing, no background music. Just me, speaking from the heart. And in that moment, I understood something I wish I'd realized years ago. Sometimes, grief and love live side by side. You can miss someone deeply and still be grateful they existed. You can cry and still smile. You can lose someone and still feel their love in a $10 music box playing on your nightstand. That realization changed how I saw everything. From then on, I started paying attention to the little ways love shows up in daily life. A text from a friend at the right moment, a stranger holding the door, the smell of cookies that reminded me of home. All these small moments became my new kind of sunshine. And every time I'd win that music box and hear those first notes, I'd think about how love never really leaves. It just changes hands. It finds its way through people, through gestures, through the smallest acts that end up meaning the most. One night, months later, I was sitting next to Ethan on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky was a wash of orange and pink, the kind my mom used to call heaven's colors. I turned to him and said, "Do you ever think about how that one little gift changed everything?" He smiled. "Yeah," he said, "but I think it just reminded us of what was already there." I leaned against him, resting my head on his shoulder, the sound of the crickets filling the silence. "I think you're right," I whispered. We sat there for a long time, saying nothing else, just watching the sun sink below the horizon, the world turning golden around us. It's funny, isn't it? How something so ordinary can feel sacred once you've been reminded of what matters. That's the lesson I'll never forget. That love doesn't have to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't have to be expensive to be priceless. It just has to be real. And that, more than anything, is what I hope people take from my story. So if you're watching this right now and you've ever felt like the people you love are too far away, or that your small gestures don't matter, remember this. Sometimes the tiniest gift can carry the loudest "I love you." Sometimes the smallest song can reach the deepest part of your heart. And sometimes a $10 Cyber Monday gift can remind you that love still lives right here in the quiet places waiting to be heard. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, If it reminded you of someone you love, do me a favor, go tell them. Right now. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect gift. Just tell them. Because love, in the end, is about showing up in the small ways every single day. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button, share it with someone who needs a little light, and remember, sometimes the simplest gestures are the ones that last forever.